Great.
Alrighty.
So, good morning, everyone. I'm Andrea Dunathan of Dunathan Consulting, and with me today I have two of my favorite ADP advisors to talk about an important issue on the new retirement plan mandate in the state of Maryland for employers in the state. So, let me ask my guests to introduce themselves. Eric Barbois.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everyone, or whenever you're watching this, good afternoon. My name is Eric Barbalais. I've been with ADP for about 4.5 years now. I'm a local representative in the DC metro area, covering pretty much all over the country, but I specialize mostly in helping small business owners get set up with payroll accounts and as well as compliance, HR support, and benefits administration. One of my local partners is joining us today, Freddie Herrenboer. He covers mostly the retirement services side of things, and I wanted to bring him on today since he's the subject matter expert in the mandate that we're looking to discuss and cover. So I'll let Freddie go ahead and introduce himself.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks, Andrea, for sharing us with your time this morning. So like Eric mentioned, I've been with ADP for close to 6 years now. I oversee the DMV for retirement services here with ADP. I help clients evaluate different retirement plans, help them get set up with startup plans, and then also educate around new legislation that's passed, which is the primary subject of today's meeting, which is the Maryland Saves mandate. So without further ado, I'll pass it back to Andrea.
Great. So I put together some questions, Freddie and Eric, to try to represent what I think my clients who are business owners in the Maryland area, what they might be interested in hearing. So let's start out with the basics. What is this new retirement plan mandate from the state?
Yeah. So with the Maryland Saves mandate, this has been an initiative really top down from the federal level to have employers set up retirement plans so their employees aren't solely relying on Social Security. They have a retirement, stream or revenue stream that they're able to take advantage, obviously, when they do decide to retire. So, the state over the years has done a lot of research, and they've, realized that one of the ways they're going to be successful with this implementation is through state mandates. So California was the first state to introduce this about 3 years ago. I think there's now 7 states, and Maryland is the newest one that is going to take into effect. Really, September 6th is the official deadline when you and your clients are going to start receiving notices about this to set it up or provide proof that you have an alternative retirement plan set up for the group.
So this is very timely for us to talk about it now, so employers are not startled when
Yeah.
September 6th comes along. So can you tell us what exactly employers are required to do? Because setting up a retirement plan seems like a big deal. So it's a little scary for people, I think.
Yeah, so essentially, when these notices do arrive September 6th, they're going to provide instructions for the clients to call into the state. So they're going to call into, 1-800 number. They're going to, provide the census data for the employees. They're going to provide employer details such as where their headquarters are. So anyone that is headquartered in Maryland is affected. So one thing I did want to point out, because I do get a lot of questions around this, is a lot of clients do have remote workers in several states, and sometimes maybe you're headquartered in Virginia, but you have remote workers in Maryland. In that case, it does not apply to you. So the only application for this mandate is if your headquarters are Maryland and your business is registered under Maryland, you are under this mandate. However, if you're outside of Maryland, you don't have to worry about this for right now.
What about, I have one client that's officially headquartered in DC, but they have a major operation location in Maryland and they have people working on site at that work location. Does that count, or is it strictly where the headquarters are?
It is strictly where the headquarters are, their primary business registration address under the IRS. That's how they're going to essentially send out the notices.
Okay, great. That's super helpful. Um, so they've got to provide some kind of retirement plan for employees. What are the options? I hear there's a state PIN, there's some private options. What's the menu of options that's available?
So it's very limited. The Maryland Saves program is essentially a Roth IRA program. So there's no pre-tax options for the employers or employees. It's a Roth IRA where the limit's going to be 6,000. with an additional $1,500 in catch-up contribution if you're age 50 or older. And there's 3 investment funds. They're under BlackRock that are going to be the investment fund selections for the Maryland Saves program.
And so are employers required to sign up for Maryland Saves and have this Roth IRA and offer it to all their employees, or could they, if they already have a SEP or a simple or maybe a 401k, does that exempt them from the state plan?
That does exempt them. So that's a good question. So if employers currently have a 401k, simple IRA, or a SEP IRA, any business sponsored retirement plan, they will just provide proof, with certain documentation. I think that the state will ask for, if you have a simple, you're going to provide X, 401k X, etc. But they are exempt from the Maryland Saves program. This only applies to the employees who currently don't have anything under a business sponsored retirement plan.
Okay. And what employers are covered? Like any size? A lot of the Maryland laws applies to employers with 15 employees and up and that type of thing.
So as long as they have one W-2 employee that is over the age of 18, they are being applied into the Maryland Saves program. So that is kind of the benchmark. If you have at least one W-2 employee, you're going to fall under this mandate.
Okay. What if that one W-2 employee is yourself because it's a solopreneur operating as an S corp, they have payroll, but it's just themselves? Does that still count?
That still counts, and we know this for certain because we see what the other states have done and can only assume that this is going to follow the same course for Maryland. So for California, it actually started with 15 employees. Then in 6 months, it actually decreased to 1. And those who were, sole corps or I'm sorry, S corps or sole proprietorships, they fell under the mandate, even if it's just themselves.
Okay, good to know. So I hate to ask the negative question, but what happens if you don't comply? Like you don't sign up for the state plan, you don't have a private plan, you don't do anything, you just miss the boat. What happens?
Yeah. So right now, there's no penalty or response linked to the mandate. However, there's talk of potentially suspending licenses for businesses that are out of compliance. And California started with the same thing where, they didn't have a penalty or fines. But what ended up happening is if a year passed and at the end of the year, they received those same notices, they actually started enforcing a dollar amount fine. I think it was $100 a day, which is pretty significant.
Yeah.
So I think that's, still the case with California. And they were, that was rolled out after a year of, receiving those notices. So for right now, there's no penalty, but there is talk of suspending that licenses for businesses. And I think what they're probably, trying to do with this is roll it out softly, see the feedback that they receive. And then afterwards, if they're not successful in the implementation of this, then they're going to start rolling out, dollar amount fines for a further incentive.
Okay. So it sounds like although there's no official grace period, they may be trying to informally provide a grace period, essentially.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So what are the pros and cons? If I have a client who's thinking, okay, either I sign up for the state plan or I quick set up a SEP IRA or a 401k, what are the pros and cons of doing either?
So the pros and cons are really, if a client is, trying to just comply with the mandate, the Maryland Saves mandate is a very cost-effective solution for employers. It's free to the employer, and if they're okay with the limited fund selections and the Roth IRA feature, I would recommend that option. The only caveat to that is it is an auto enroll feature. So if a company, were to, let's say, for as an example, have 10 employees, they're going to provide all those employee data and census information to Maryland. Then they're going to be auto enrolled at 5% for the retirement plan. They can opt out, but it actually has to be initiated by the employee afterwards, calling into the state and then letting them know that they would like to be opted out. So there is a little bit of back and forth revolving that. But let's say, an employer wants to offer, very flexible option for the employees that includes both pre-tax and after-tax, and it also allows for a higher limit in terms of the contributions that the employees are able to make throughout the year. The 401k and the SEP IRA and SIP IRA are going to solve those problems for the clients. So those are really kind of the two biggest differentiators. The other con, and this is something that we saw in California, is when employers did set up the California mandate and they had 10, 15 employees, what we ended up seeing, because we do have a lot of clients and we do gather a lot of data, is some of those employees actually decided to leave that company because they only offered the Roth option and they were also looking for a pre-tax or a higher limit. So they ended up going to their competitors who offered more flexible retirement options. So that's something to also take into account, depending on your employee demographic. If that's something that you foresee, maybe start being proactive in setting up a flexible option so you don't run into some of the issues that those California companies ran into, if that makes sense.
That does. And I do have clients who, like many employers, they really care about their employees' well-being and they want to offer good benefits. Some of them are very kind of intimidated by the private plans. Like, it seems like setting up a 401k is a big deal and they'd like to do it, but they can't figure out quite how and so forth. If they happen to be with ADP, I would immediately refer them to both of you to get that rolling, because I know you'd give advice.
Yeah.
I know we can't go through every type of retirement plan, but are there some of those private plans that also don't necessarily require employer contribution? They're pretty flexible that way, and they're not too much of a pain to set up. I'm not asking you to advise people to go to a certain type of plan, but do
Yeah.
those options exist? Should they talk to their payroll specialist and so forth?
So let's say that an employer obviously wants to be cost effective, and offering a match can create some expenditure exposure that they might not be looking for. So there's what's called a traditional 401k, so where the matching is optional and discretionary, and primarily you're setting this up for the employees to take advantage. Whether they want to enroll or not is really up to them, but it's a very flexible option. And like you said, if they do have ADP payroll, we make it simple by automating, the back end process for them, all the administration, filings of the forms, et cetera. And then employees, they manage everything from one place, same place they go to view their pay stubs, et cetera.
That makes sense. It sounds like heading to your payroll company first is a really good idea. And if your payroll company is not as full featured, maybe consider that.
Exactly.
Consider where to get help. Okay. So let me look at, I had some other questions I know. So it sounds like this is kind of a summary of what you just said, but it sounds like from an employee's point of view, they may like to see the employer pick one of these plans. Like, the employee's point of view, they'd like a private plan, they'd like pre-tax contributions, they'd like the employer to give money, right? Like, that might be the golden plan from the employee's point of view. And then the employer can balance that against what they can afford and what's quick and easy to set up and so forth, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And if, let's say I had a client who would like to set up a 401k, but they're going to need to go do some research and make some decisions and decide which type, all that. And there's going to take some time. Do you think this is an urgent thing where they should sign up for the state plan and then in a couple months switch it over to their private plan? Or if they intend to implement a private plan, they should just hold tight, start implementing the private plan, don't worry about signing up for the state plan?
Yeah, so our recommendation, and this is actually the recommendation following from our CPAs and financial advisors that have experiences in California. So the employers who started the route with the private or with the mandated plan from California, they found that a lot of the employees really didn't like it. They were leaving, and then trying to switch is a little bit of a nightmare because there's a lot of paperwork involved. So our recommendation is, if you're, intending to go with a private plan, if that's your, ultimatum or your final kind of end game with this, then I would hold off and start working with, yourself, Andrea, or financial advisor that you work with.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of contacts that, you could leverage us for, and they would help, navigating which plan is best, which company works for you. But that is our recommendation, is I would hold off on the Maryland mandate plan and start exploring, the private plan options for the group.
Okay, that sounds good. Um, do you think the state plan is safe? When employers are trying to weigh whether to go with that for the first year, let's say.
It is safe. Obviously, the state doesn't want to put any employees or any employers in a position that is, risky for them in terms of their, retirement funds. The only thing that you should keep in mind is, with a 401k or simpler SEP, we like to, put in place a diversified portfolio that gives the employees a lot of options. As a fiduciary, won't want to do what's in the best interest of them in terms of their retirement allocation. And with the Maryland Saves mandate, they're very limited in terms of the investment. So only 3 from BlackRock. BlackRock is a very credible company. They've been in business for a really long time. But sometimes, you want to keep that in mind if you're offering that to your employees, just to give them, more exposure into the market that might be a little bit more conservative.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. This is very helpful because you're giving some really nuanced information, which is why I love working with you guys. So, um, so before we get to next steps, like that an employer should say, what else sort of factually about this new mandate have I not asked about that you think we should cover?
I think we covered a lot of it. It's, they're trying to make it as simple as possible for employers to understand. Really, it's, hey, if you don't want to set up a 401k, or don't want to set up a SEP or a simple, and you just want to comply with the mandate, if you have 1 to 5 employees, your employee demographic, you could foresee that, hey, they're going to actually take the initiative if they don't want to opt out. Call the state. That's not going to be too big of a problem. That's the
Mhm.
easiest and simplest way. The other question that I would maybe pose is, with a 401k and also with this Maryland mandate, you also have to consider the administration that you might have to undertake. So a lot of that, a lot of the workload on the employer's end is the money movement between the payroll systems and the 401k. So with the
Yep.
Maryland mandate, there's no integration with any payroll systems or software. So they're going to give you a website that you're going to have access to. And after you run the payroll, you're going to actually have to manually enter in all of that information
Mhm.
so that they could remit those contributions and post them to the employees' account balances. So it's something to take into consideration, because a lot of payroll companies do offer 401k or simpler SEP IRAs that integrate with the systems, so you
Mhm.
don't have to undertake as much manual workloads with the administration to make it easy. So although it might seem very simple or easy, sometimes when you actually implement it, that manual money movement can be quite a burden to the employers.
I can see that, especially with multiple employees
Mhm.
enrolled. It might be.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's super helpful. So, who should an employer talk to about setting up a company plan or registering for the state plan? Is their payroll provider the first people you would suggest to go to? Their CPA? What's the best?
Yeah, so the payroll providers, such as ADP, Paychex, I think are really the only 2 proprietary payroll companies that have 401ks as broker dealers. I think
Hmm.
other payroll companies do offer integrations with 401k providers that you could talk to. But if you have a financial advisor or a trusted business advisor like yourself, Andrea, I would recommend that they would talk to their financial advisor, their COO, CFO, or CPA first, and they usually would have enough relationships or contacts to point their clients in the right direction with people that they trust. Because, let's say, a month or a year from now, if you go to your payroll contact or your payroll representative, so, they're going to get the job done. But in terms of the servicing, those CPAs and those COOs and financial advisors have contacts that you could work directly with afterwards throughout the implementation and servicing, so that everyone's on the same page, and there's nothing getting slipped through the cracks. So that's my recommendation: is go through your trusted advisors first. If you work really well with your payroll companies, that's obviously your first go-to, but your second go-to is those trusted business advisors.
That makes a lot of sense from, my business consultant point of view. I would say CPA just because there's tax implications to the plan that you
Exactly.
choose, right? For the employer and the employee. So that would make a lot
Exactly.
of sense. Okay. Alrighty. And so I think that's all the questions I had. Anything else from either of you that we haven't touched on?
No, the only other thing, which is just another kind of timely deadline that is nearing, is the safe harbor deadline. So, a very popular 401k plan is a safe harbor plan. So, there's again compliance and different testing and rules with the 401k. So, if you, as an employer and you have, let's say, 10 employees, and you want to also participate in a 401k, this is the first time that the group is setting it up, but you also want to take advantage of that as the business owner. There's certain rules where the government doesn't like the business owners to take more of an advantage on a 401k, defer more of a percentage, take more of the profit sharing at year end, things like that. So a safe harbor totally eliminates all those concerns and worries. A lot of your CPAs will actually recommend this plan. And again, like you mentioned, your CPAs will know your financials a lot better than anyone else and can recommend you these types of plans. But the safe harbor deadline is actually October 1st to be able to set a safe harbor and contribute this year. So if that October 1st passes, you're going to be implementing the safe harbor after January 1 of 2023. So those are just some things to keep in mind as we near some deadlines. Is that safe harbor deadline for this year is October 1st.
That is super helpful because I imagine people will be looking into this rapidly as this mandate deadline approaches. So
Of
thank you so
course.
much.
And the notices are supposed to be received by employers September 6th. So that is the latest deadline that Maryland has told us, that they are supposed to receive those September 6th.
Okay. And do you expect them to go out by email, by hard copy letter?
Hard copy letter is what we're expecting. That's how it was done in California, and then following up with email notifications as well.
Okay. So we can tell people to keep an eye out. Great.
Andrea, I have, if it's helpful, I have a slide with my and Freddie's contact information. I can happily
Yes,
share here.
absolutely.
I'll just go ahead and share my screen so that we have that in case anyone has any direct follow-up questions. So this is both of our information here. So again, just sort of summarizing, I'm a good contact for anyone that has questions regarding sort of payroll, HR, and compliance. And then Freddie is licensed professional in the retirement services field and obviously just demonstrate a lot of great knowledge for the Maryland Saves program. So if you have any questions there, feel free to reach out, to him directly as well. So
Thank you so much. That's one thing I've really appreciated. I've worked with Eric for a while, and he's so happy to answer questions, even for people who are not his clients, just to provide better education for people out there who are trying to run a business. So it's great resource.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. If there's nothing else, thanks so much for setting this up. I hope that whoever watches this finds this educational, and Freddie and I are here as resources as well as Andrea to help guide through this and any other questions you may have regarding your business. So appreciate the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you both, Eric and Freddie. Take care.
Take care. Thanks, Andrea.
Bye bye.